All right, we're live.
All right. Thanks, Anthony. Appreciate it. Hey, good afternoon. It is May 14th, 5 p.m. Pacific time. So excited to have everybody joining us today. And if you don't mind, go ahead and go on to the chat. And as I've always done, I'm excited to hear who is calling in from where. And so I know that we've always had a few of our IAC friends from Hong Kong join in with us. If you're joining in with us today, please let us know. But go ahead and go on to the chat. If you may, please let us know what if you're a parent, what age child you are representing, if you are a student, what grade you're in, and then also what city. Thanks, Hinsdale, Illinois. Fantastic. I used to live in Elmhurst, so I have a fondness for Chicagoland. We'll be back in Chicagoland in late September to also do a couple of workshops. So, Illinois would love to meet if you are if you are out there. And otherwise, but go ahead and keep posting. Let us know what city you're from, what age, what year in school you are representing, and grateful to have everybody come on with us today. I If you have been faithfully jumping into our webinars, I did a similar topic in February. And so we did a college list, an introduction to college list and college tours. And so there's going to be a rehash of a good amount of that content. So if you've been faithfully going in, you feel like you've absorbed all of the content and have it memorized. Anthony says you get extra credit today. If you feel like you didn't quite memorize it all, you're going to get a little bit of a rehash today on some of the foundations of building a college that really works for you and not works for somebody else, but works for you. But I did update it with a little bit more content today, so excited to share some of that. And as I've always said, as I've been saying the last couple presentations, I feel like your goal as you come in, because I think we try to pack in as much good content. Sometimes it's a lot, it's a bit too much, I understand. But your goal here is just to really pull out maybe two or three things you think are important to you. And you can always rewatch the video. You can come back. A lot of this content is piecemeal, maybe represented in other people's blog posts or whatever. But your goal is just to understand what might be an applicable take-home point for you, and to go back and see how you might make an adjustment that is more fair, life-giving, and appropriate for your context, right? So, and your context is going to be a little bit different than everybody else's. But our topic for today, building a college list that works for you. One more thing. If you have a question, go ahead and post it on the Q&A box. Anthony, my trusted partner in crime for many years, will come along at the end and we'll pull together all the questions and spend as much time as we can at the end, digging deep and answering all your specific thoughts and queries. So, without further ado, let's jump in. Just to do a quick intro of myself, my name is Elton Lin. I'm CEO and founder of Illumina Education. I've been doing private college advising for almost 16 years. Our team at Illumin, we have 14 counselors on our team. We work with almost 450 students a year, submit over 2,000 applications a year, read almost 4,000 essay drafts a year. So we see quite a bit even within our context. Our consulting director is a former UC admissions counselor. We were former Brown Rice, UT Austin, USC admissions director on our advisory board. So we have quite a bit of visibility into the admission process and certainly understand how an application and an essay is reviewed, and certainly try to help our students put their best foot forward. Um, Our internal admit rate to top 15 schools is up to 7x the national average. And I've been very fortunate to have been recognized by some media outlets across the United States. So just as a quick intro, just to share with you, we just released a free senior timeline calendar. So you can go ahead and scan the QR code there, download it. And we put in a lot of work, try to pool together all the key deadlines that are important for seniors. And this is specifically for class of 2027. So if you are a rising senior, current junior, this calendar is specifically for you. So go ahead and go feel free to download that. And also, if there's feedback on anything that we're missing, please send us an email and let us know. And we're always open and wanting to improve and make things a little bit better. So go ahead and please do so. And we appreciate any feedback. All right, today's topics: what factors matter when choosing colleges, how to start building a college list, building a list of colleges, and absolutely open to as many questions as possible at the end. So let's jump in. What are the most important factors when choosing colleges? Just to give us kind of a quick primer. Obviously, there's academic fit, financial fit, social cultural fit, and let's dive into academic fit. Does it, as basic as does the school offer my major? And the reality is that even though a lot of schools offer a lot of majors, not every school offers every major. And you can't imagine how often I hear from students, I really want to go to Stanford or Harvard and I really want to study business. Neither school has an undergraduate business program, right? So I think just answering this basic question of does a school offer my major is certainly important. Do I prefer small discussion-based classes or large lecture hall environments? Um, how many students return after freshman year? How many graduate in 4 years? Are internships accessible? What are the postgraduate job placement? What's the postgrad job placement data? What is the grad school placement data? And I mean, without kind of, and well, I kind of get into it in a moment, but I do think that's probably the more important data point as it relates to an increasingly volatile job landscape over the forthcoming 4 or 5 years. Which schools really help students find work the moment they graduate? So I think, and I think you'd be surprised that it's not always the highest ranked schools, right? So I think really trying to understand what is important to you, what's the right fit type of environment, pool of resources that are the best fit for you. So let me kind of give you a little quick comparison. If you're looking at three different schools, and I would say UC Berkeley, Northeastern, Pepperdine, UC Berkeley, arguably, perhaps, the most renowned large public school, public university in the United States. Northeastern, which has certainly a lot of merit based in the Boston area. Pepperdine, small liberal arts type school in the West Coast. And if you were just to look at some of their data, it's all a little bit different. So if I can highlight maybe a couple of things, if you look at the med school matriculation rate for all three schools, meaning the percent of undergraduates who are applying to med school, which percent of them are admitted to at least one med school, the matriculation rate to med school is lowest at UC Berkeley, 51%, 80% at Northeastern, and above 90% at Pepperdine, right? So I think if the goal is to go to med school, it would certainly it would be absolutely reasonable, make total sense for a student to even prioritize a school like Pepperdine over UC Berkeley or Northeastern. Or maybe you're looking at job placement. And so when you look at job placement, you can see that Northeastern has 98% get internships, and it's largely because Northeastern has their own internal internship program. Where they pool together corporate partners to provide opportunities for their students. And if 98% get internships, 97% are either employed or attend graduate school within 6 months after they graduate. Fantastic, fantastic number, actually. And so if you're comparing between UC Berkeley and Northeastern Pepperdine and look at their percentages, it seems like Northeastern may be the better fit for post-grad employment opportunity. Or if the goal is to really be a Fortune 500 CEO, perhaps UC Berkeley might be the better fit. Maybe you might extrapolate that and say that like if you're talking about network and tapping into a certain like ecosystem as it relates to hiring into consulting. Maybe UC Berkeley might be a better fit in that perspective. So the point being is that like it's not always you can't always just say the higher ranked school is a better fit. You have to really understand what your goals are and then begin to reverse engineer back to see what might be the best fit. So higher ranked schools do not guarantee a better fit. Now, I think it's always easy to go back to rankings. I think there's some value to rankings. For our team at Lumen, we are certainly not obsessed about rankings. It's not a high priority, but we certainly talk about it. It certainly is a conversation point for a lot of our families we work with. But the reality is that higher ranked schools do not guarantee better fit. So when you're trying to again ascertain what type of academic fit you're looking for, good questions to ask yourself. Certainly, what are my career goals? Do I prefer deep and wide learning? What learning environment best suits me? Research, finding employment. But maybe the last and most important thing is that what if I change my mind? And when you think about students, I mean, and perhaps there might be some counselors who are on the call, maybe some parents. Maybe if you were to think back to your own journey, how sure were you about your future when you were 17 years old? I graduated with a civil engineering degree. I'm certainly currently am not doing civil engineering. And had I had maybe an opportunity to change my mind, I might have, right? So I think, what if I change my mind? And that may mean that as you're looking for um, schools to put on your college list, the reality is that you're going to need to be a little bit more flexible and not just feel like there's only one school that I'm destined to go to, or there's only one school that will lead to my success. And that's not the case at all. So being flexible, looking at schools that provide a wide range of academic resources is really a good thing. So financial fit, this is not a deep dive into to college financial planning. We will have a college financial planner come on and join us and do a webinar with us. But in the meantime, quick questions to ask yourself: what can I afford per year for college? I think obviously that's very important. So it's good to set a clear budget for what you can spend. Does the school meet 100% of demonstrated needs? So this can be found, and I'll kind of show you real quickly where you can find it. But you can see whether a school does meet 100% of demonstrated need. And if so, that's obviously a good thing. What is the net price of the school? Every school, this is an Obama era administration legislation that every school needs to have a net price calculator where families can get a relatively accurate appraisal of what their financial aid package may look like given a family's current financial status or what their financial status looks like on their tax return. So every school has a net price calculator. Maybe you might want to consider what are hidden costs. Is a financial aid, like front loaded? Is it renewable every year? That's, questions to ask. Just quickly, if you're looking to see if a school meets 100% of demonstrated need, not every school, but many schools participate in the common data set submission where like colleges put out a pool of their data for public access for again, including parents and students to take a look at. This is an excerpt from the common data set of Pepperdine University. You can see that if you're a full-time undergraduate student, Pepperdine says that they will meet up to 70% of your demonstrated need. If you need 100% of your demonstrated need in order to attend, then you certainly should be looking for schools that demonstrate 100% need or that meet 100% need. But this can all be found online and is public. Every school, here's an example of the net price calculator for Cornell University. You just search that university and search net price calculator, and that should come up. Thirdly, social cultural fit. Certainly, like there's, a good questions to ask is what's the typical student type at that school? And it doesn't mean that you have to be that type of student, but is that type of student a student that you are, or someone that you want to befriend, or someone that you're aspiring to be, or someone that you can see being a friend of yours? Do you see yourself being a part of a community that that type of student would be at? Is it a suitcase school, a commuter school? I have, I had some students who visited University of Pacific and Stockton here in California. Um, they have a really well-resourced engineering school, lots of funding that's come into University of Pacific over the course of the last 10, 15 years. Really outstanding resources, but everybody at the school goes home over the weekend. So there's like, it almost seems like it's like empty on the weekends, and that's not the type of maybe university community campus that you want to be at. How much does school spirit matter to me? Are there enough people who share my identity? And what, whether that matters to you, right? How does a school handle conflict? What do people do for fun that isn't partying? Questions to ask, and that could very well be understood well on a college tour. So let me encourage you to really consider touring schools. Oftentimes for rising seniors, a good time was spring break this past year. So you're likely your spring break is over. And you may want to consider going sometime at the end of the summer when some of these schools, or maybe like early in September when more of these universities are like schools in session, you can go and take a look at what the school is like. I would, maybe a good best practice to remind parents and students that if you're setting up for a tour, students should use their email and the same email that you're going to be using to sign up for your college app platforms. Use that same email to sign up for a tour, because that's really the only way for colleges to track whether you actually came. And for the universities that care about demonstrated interest, not every school does, but for the schools that care about demonstrated interest, they want to know whether you've come, and that does give you a little bit of a boost in the review process. And if you go on a tour, you can certainly request to set up a Q&A with admission staff. If you get the opportunity to speak with the area rep that will read your application, it doesn't hurt. And so these are some opportunities to do so. You can certainly, here are some other best practices with regards to eating in the dining hall, reading posters at student unions and dorms. Like I can probably give you like three or four stories based on all these things, but some good best practices about what is happening. And if you get an opportunity to talk to students, if you had to describe your school in one word, what would it be? And so try to boil down what other students who are currently attending the school, what their experience like. And another question I always like asking students who are actually on campus and actually attending the school, what's one thing you could change that will make your student experience 10x better? And oftentimes they really need to think about what's like if they could change the registration process, if they could create one dining hall that's like three buildings closer to where all the classes are. Like they can get really specific with what are the maybe one or two things that would really just change the entire experience. And so I always like asking good questions. Always try to talk to real students who are attending school. If you talk to the student who's actually leading the tour, and they may not give you the most transparent response, but if you could talk to anybody who's on campus, that would be best. So, when you're thinking about the right college fit, obviously academic and career fit is important, financial fit, social fit. What we haven't talked about is location fit, admissions fit. Location fit, meaning like obviously if you have preferences for being in certain parts of the United States. I do find that oftentimes when I get students and families saying that they don't want to be in like a more rural area, but you're okay with like Cornell University in Ithaca, which is sort of in the middle of nowhere, right? So I think like, I would say be flexible on some of those things and take the opportunity to visit schools, really get a sense of what really is a good fit for you. And maybe not be, don't be so fixed on what it is that you think you might be looking for. Obviously, admission fit, so you can't, it's the 3.0 student who really wants to go to Stanford. Maybe not the best admission fit. So really think about whether that school's a good fit for you, and an excitement fit, which is very subjective and totally understand. But I remember I have a goddaughter who's attending Santa Clara University. I went with her to the Santa Clara tour. I was, also introduced myself to the admission person, and that was a good thing. But I walked with her through the dorm. To be frank with you, I'm not sure. I thought the dorms were fine. I thought the dining area was fine. There was nothing in particular. I mean, I liked the school, but there's nothing in particular that was hitting me. And then, like, once we finished a tour, she literally said, like, this is my top school. I can see myself being here. And there's just something about that is good, and you have to give credence to it. And so, what is that excitement fit? Here is a survey done by Morning Consult that surveyed students comparing the priorities of 16 and 19-year-olds. So essential, and then with recent college graduates. So what matters most when you chose your college or when choosing your college, and then when you chose your college? So if you kind of scan your eyes to look at what items seem the most important, is school location, affordable tuition, popularity of STEM majors, varsity sports are important. Like you can kind of see, like the orangey dot is what 16 and 19-year-olds said was most important, and the green dot was what recent college grads said was most important. So even if you can look at that right now, near your hometown was really important when you were like choosing to apply. But when you graduated, you realized like it being near to your hometown wasn't as important, right? So you can see that from that line. So let me give you a summary of that chart. Is that what mattered most for high school students? Well, location near to home, popularity, prestigious STEM majors, safety. But what really mattered most after students graduated, as you reflected on their time in college, small class sizes, research or internship opportunities, and of course, low student or parent debt, right? So I think when you realize it, that those elements as students were graduating and reflecting on their experience really were what provided them the longest term value. So I think what I'm trying to say here is that success is not tied to just one school. I mentioned that earlier, but as you're thinking about like maybe what is important to you now, what might be important to you later, as you think about like how sure you are about your career and college major goals, maybe and where you might be 2 or 3 years down the road, things change and it's okay. And so, as you think about which schools you might be thinking about, be flexible with some of those priorities, and realize that there are many ways to be successful in the college landscape in the United States. So, okay, how do I build a college list that is right for me? So let me give you some of the basic mechanics. There is a certainly think about college major, obviously thinking about what you can afford to pay on a year-to-year basis, and then thinking about what other non-negotiables that are important to you, whether it's location, whether community, access to research, family. I often find that, since we're based in California, we get a lot of students who are like, I really need to be in California weather. And frankly, where else is it like California weather? So I try to encourage students to it's okay to experience some northeastern winters for a couple of seasons, right? So and it's not going to hurt you, right? So but think about what other non-negotiables you have, and then you have to begin comparing your average GPA test scores resume in relation to the other applicants who are considering applying to whatever school you're thinking about. So you do need to begin looking at whether it is national averages, whether it is high school specific data. I use the term Naviance because Naviance is a software platform that a lot of high schools use. Your high school may use another platform, Score, Maya Learning, any other type of platform, but any specific high school college admissions data. So you can see from your high school the average GPA and test score of a student admitted to, like, say, Cornell or Santa Clara University or UT Austin. You can kind of see some of that data. So high school specific data. If so, you begin somewhere. If you don't have high school specific data, going to national averages is good. But you need to find some place data point to compare against. So if you have national averages, you can get you can get essentially the like a like a spectrum or a essentially the GPA and test score um, GPA and test score, like say, so like average and like kind of the minimum accepted and the sort of the maximum, the kind of bracket of GPA and test scores that might be admitted. And you can also find that on some websites, some school websites publish it. You can look at it at the common data set. Also, many common data sets also include this data. So if you are like say below the 25th percentile with the GPA and test score, I oftentimes say that ought to be considered as a dream school. If you're below the 25th percentile and up to the 50th percentile, perhaps you might consider it as a reach school. Target school might be 50 to 70, 75th. And if you're above the 75th, maybe may consider that as a safety school, right? And maybe just to define what I would consider as dream reach target and safety, sub 10% admit rate, 10 to 40% reach, target is 40, 60%, and safety is above 60%, right? So I think if you have to begin somewhere looking at national averages for specific schools, allows you to at least get a beginning point for how likely you're going to be admitted. So if I were to give you, an example, Cornell's 75th percentile for based on their common data set data that they provided is a 3.88, weighted 4.35, SAT 1470, ACT 33. I have a student, Theo, who has a 3.75, 34 on the ACT. Now, his ACT may be higher than the 75th percentile ACT 33, but his GPA is lower. And in that sense, I would consider this likely a reach, or maybe even possibly a target, but likely a reach. And so I would begin there with regards to something like Theo. Now, if you have high school specific data where you can look at the average GPA of students admitted for each particular university, average test scores, you can see the application history, which is number applied, number admitted, number enrolled, which is super helpful. And then you can even see the percentage admitted on the early deadline, admitted on the regular deadline. You can get a lot of specific information that is based on students from your school applying to that university. And so I think that's really the better case. Now, if you have access to that information, this may be a good data point. Obviously, this is not hard and fast, but oftentimes we use this as a way to help us get a quick gauge on whether that school is really a reach target or safety. So if you're below the average GPA, then it's for sure reach. And it's only a safety when you're, say 100 points up on the SAT and well above the average GPA, right? So I think it needs to be very clear before it's really considered a true safety. So if you're looking at this student named Theo, this is specifically from his high school. So his high school, the average entry GPA is a 4.33. Again, the average ACT entry is 33, even though he's a 34. His GPA is actually pretty well below the average entry GPA for Cornell from his school. So therefore, I would consider the Cornell a reach for Theo as well. So okay. And then when you think about your extracurricular activities, obviously for top 30 universities, resume means more because the majority of applicants already have good grades and good test scores. So the differentiator for students who are applying to the top schools oftentimes becomes your resume and what you're doing outside of class. If you're applying for selective majors, that may also cut your admit rate by 50% or more. And then activities need to support the intended major, especially for very selective majors. So if you're, maybe I think this is changing as of this year, but in previous years, the most selective major has been computer science, and you really need to tell a very specific computer science story or since there's so many students applying for so few spaces, it'd be easy for an admissions reader to pass on. So, okay. Maybe just to give you a quick glimpse, for UCLA, the general admin rate is 9.4%. But if you look at computer science, it's 7%. If you look at engineering, it's 7%. Design, media, arts, 3.1%. Nursing, never going out of style, 0.5% at UCLA. So, depending on your major, it may change the likelihood of you gaining admission to specific schools. Even within the engineering school, there are different admit rates for even different engineering disciplines. So even as compared to materials engineering, in relation to computer science, there's going to be a slightly different admit rate. So just so you know, if you're applying into more selective majors, that will change your likelihood of being admitted to the school. So, all right. All right, so when building a college list, let me make some suggestions before we get into some examples. Number one, balance is beautiful, if I may say, and in this day and age, safer is better. And I'll kind of get into it more as we go through some of the student examples. Let me encourage you to find the right fit for you and try not to compare. It's easy to feel like, to like look at what other people are applying to. It's also I oftentimes feel like maybe the parent like WhatsApp group or WeChat group that like shares a lot of like other people's like applying, what school they got into, what schools they're applying to. It's just causing a lot of people a lot of grief, right? So if I were to encourage you to either silence it, only look at it when you have to, try not to like look at what everybody else is doing. Find the right fit for you. Try not to compare. Prioritize which of the below is more important, whether it's academic fit, social fit, financial fit, career fit. It even could be prestige fit. Maybe I did mention earlier that higher ranking schools don't automatically provide a good fit. But if you need to, if you're prioritizing higher ranked schools, I mean that's at least have that conversation. I can understand, and get it out on the table and be open about it. If I were to also make an admonishment, an encouragement, create a balance with more safety schools, because more safety schools in this day and age, it's becoming increasingly less clear and less predictable about which schools are truly target and safety schools. So let me encourage you to apply to more safety schools. Number one, because safety range schools provide more merit aids. So if it's helpful to have 5, 10, 15, $20,000 of additional merit aid to attend that school, then applying to more safety schools gives you more options. But secondly, if I can just share just a bit of experience, oftentimes I encourage students to front load a lot of their safety schools on the early round, not early decision. I'll get into early decision in a moment. But if there's an early action, non-binding early action, early deadline to apply to as many safety schools as possible, and then you hear some of those results early, I'll tell you, every student, whether you're a 4.0 student or a 3.0 student, almost every student feels like they're not going to get into any schools. Like there's this feeling of like, I don't know if anyone's going to accept me anywhere. And seeing students get some admission letters, like get some like you've been admitted letters across the finish line in mid-December, like just helps everybody. Like it's good for students' mental health. It's good to remind students that, you know what, there are a bunch of schools that really want you. And like they feel like I always tell students, hey, you are actually going to go to college, and so it provides a lot of early encouragement as you wait for some of your reach and dream schools to come through with the results in maybe February, March or April, right? So let me encourage you, apply to more safety schools, apply to them early so that you can get those results and then have a few in your back pocket. So it's good for everybody's good for the entire process. So let me kind of review a couple things. I will do an early decision webinar as well. But just to be clear with you, the early decision, if you're not clear what the early decision option is, If you apply to a school early decision, if you are admitted to that school, then it's a binding agreement and you have to attend. If you apply early action, it's non-binding. So if you're admitted, you don't have to go, but you also get the benefit of hearing the result early. So restricted early action, which is which is primarily just four schools, which is Harvard, Stanford, Yale, and Princeton. Restricted early action means like you can only apply to like one early school. And so even for them, even though it's not binding, they request that you only apply to one early school at all. So if you apply to Stanford, now there's a couple of caveats with early deadline public schools, and I can get into that in Q&A if you'd like. But restricted early action normally is like Stanford saying, we only want you to apply to one early school and that's it. But if you're admitted, you don't have to come. But if you're admitted to Stanford, would you go? Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's probably what they think as well. So restricted early action, early action, and then early decision two is a later deadline early decision. So which means that if you apply early decision one in November, and then you hear the decision in December, let's just say you're not admitted in December, you get the opportunity to use an early decision two option to use ED a second time in the same admission cycle. And then some regular deadlines: University of California, November 30th, UT Austin, December 1st, and then the regular round deadline is January 1st, and after that for many of the schools. Some basic rules when applying early decision. Early decision is binding, can only have one active ED application at any given time. So you can't apply to two ED schools at the same time. You can't apply to Duke and University of Pennsylvania at the same November 1st deadline. So don't do it. It's not going to work. And then the only accepted or acceptable reason to back out of an ED agreement is documented financial hardship. So if you do get in and you really like need to back out, that's really the only real way. ED follows a much tighter timeline than standard application. So as mentioned, ED1 is around November 1st. You'll hear the result around mid-December. ED2 deadlines are around January 1st, and you will hear the result around mid-February. And then, as mentioned, breaking an ED agreement can damage your high school's relationship with that college, potentially hurting future applicants from your school. So the school, your high school, has vested interest to keep you, to keep your agreement with the ED school that you apply to. And then not every school has ED1, ED2, or EA. So you have to look at each specific school, see which one has an early program, and then see how you might want to employ that. So the animation got messed up here. But just to illustrate this again, if you applied to Duke via ED1 on November 3rd, you get the result on December 15th. Unfortunately, you're rejected or deferred. You have the option to then apply again with a school that has an ED2 program at January 1st. And then if you hear back on, you could potentially hear back on February 1st, and then utilize your ED option again. Utilize your ED option a second time, and improve your chances to that particular school. So, a list of common ED1 and ED2 schools. So you can see a list of schools that do have one or both of these programs. I don't know if you noticed, but Johns Hopkins is on all the ED2 schools also have ED1. So if you're like thinking about Johns Hopkins, but maybe you might want to like save Johns Hopkins for an ED2 as opposed to using it for ED1, understood. But there's a lot of kind of strategic ways to try to attack how to use it twice to your best benefit, right? All right, some student examples before we get to questions. Let me give you some examples about how to build out a sample college list that I think is both fair to targeting like your dream schools, but making sure there's enough safeties on the back end. So this is a student, John, Saratoga High School here in the Bay Area. 4.0 unweighted, 4.4 weighted, 1520 on the SAT. He's a violin player in the orchestra, robotics team captain. He also launched an iPhone app through the MIT Launch Summer program, had 5,000 downloads. He has a couple other leadership roles. Strong candidate overall, natural leader, hands-on learner, and applying into electrical engineering. Maybe his school list looks like this. His dream school is MIT. Went to the MIT launch. He really wants to apply to MIT. Some of his reach schools look like this: Johns Hopkins, UC Berkeley, University of Michigan, especially for engineering, very selective. If you look at his target schools, Purdue, UC Davis, BU, Case, and if you look at his safeties, all super strong, especially like the Penn State, Texas A&M, Virginia Tech, UMass Amherst, super strong engineering schools, lots of research money, very well, yeah, like a lot going on in these engineering schools. So these are not uh, like 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 schools that are just like, oh, these are schools that provide very rich engineering training experiences. So what I like about it is that, again, there's room for the dream and reach schools, but there's enough safety schools to really make sure when it's all said and done, like you've got good results. So let me share with you his results. He did apply to MIT on the early round, was unfortunately rejected on the early rounds at MIT. He applied to Johns Hopkins on 82 and was admitted. And so for the rest of these schools, we didn't have to kind of go through the process of applying. But this is an example of a student who utilized the 82 option and was able to go to Johns Hopkins for electrical engineering. Let me share with you Ronald, and a student in suburban Phoenix. Martial arts, Model UN vice president, finance and internship with regards to his activities. Overall, decent resume, 3.4, 3.65, 1300. Maybe his academics were okay. Not super great, and he prefers big cities, not small schools. Business econ was his major, and these are the schools he applied to. So again, if you look at the contour of these schools, these are all schools that have proper undergraduate business programs. They are largely large schools or medium-sized private schools in large cities, right? So I think, when you look at it, University of Illinois, University of Washington, yeah, really outstanding undergraduate business schools. For his GPA level, they were kind of reachy. And so if you look at his results, unfortunately, he was not admitted to UIUC and University of Washington. Indiana is actually a really good undergraduate business school. He was admitted to Indiana, but was not admitted to the business program. Was admitted to Purdue. And if you kind of just, again, look at the contour, the gray is waitlisted. The highlighted yellow is admitted. He gets an opportunity to apply to some big schools that he really wants to, but he has a lot of good options. When it's all said and done, he has a lot of good options. And he opted to go to Fordham in New York City. They have a Wall Street internship program that he's really interested in. And so you have to go to Fordham, right? So, and then lastly, Taylor from Hong Kong International School. You can kind of get a sense of 3.63 GPA, 31 on the ACT. Songwriting club president, speech and debate, wrote a play for her school, and prefers small discussions, knowing professors, and being on the West Coast. So those were her preferences, and wants a major in English. And again, we gave an opportunity to, hey, let's make sure, student, you apply to your dream school, and you feel like you have no regrets. So her dream school was USC. Vandy. Vandy has gotten super difficult to get into these past couple of years, and I went over that in the admissions trends webinar if you were on it. Vandy gotten super difficult. Great school to study English, but these were her dream schools. UC Davis, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, Pitzer College in Southern California. And you can kind of get a sense of the type of school that she wants to apply to. Slightly smaller school. She included Long Beach State, not only because it was in California, but has a lot of pipeline into Hollywood, right? So Steven Spielberg's alumni, Long Beach State, right? So let me share with you your results. Unfortunately, no USC, no Vandy, but was admitted to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, waitlisted to Davis. but was admitted to Chapman and Pepperdine. And for her, she opted to go to Chapman, one of the best film programs in the United States, very, very close second to USC and NYU. But again, a lot of connections back into the entertainment industry for writing screenplays, writing scripts, and using her writing interest to gain a foothold into that type of industry. So, college items we didn't discuss. We have future webinars planned for early decision strategy, transferring to the University of California. That's coming up as well. College financial planning. Tell us what other topics you want us to cover. So please let us know in the chat what other topics you think would be helpful for you. A few other last considerations before we go to Q&A. Maybe you might want to consider being a higher student at a lower rank school versus a lesser student at a higher rank school. Now, there's some sociological studies that have compared like being in the top third of the academic class of that school to being at the bottom third of a higher rank school. And there's some comparisons to where the student who is at the top third of the academic pool have higher mid-career year earnings than a student who's at the bottom third of the academic pool at the higher rank school. You can talk about this as maybe like students feeling more confident once they come out of college. Maybe they get access to the better job recruitment for that university. You can talk about a lot of things, but perhaps going to some place where you're not sort of fighting for your life may be something to think about. Undergrad is only one stop on the educational journey. There's grad school. There's other things. So it's not the end all. And college prestige matters some, but my sense is much less than you think. And I feel like this is another 20-minute conversation that we can have, maybe perhaps over Q&A. But it does matter in certain contexts. But yeah, just much less than you think. And then on average, almost 60% of students change majors before graduating. So again, you know where you start is not necessarily where you finish. And then location has an impact on post-grad recruiting. One of my students, computer science at UIUC, University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, their career fair when he began looking for jobs were very prominent Midwest software engineering recruitment outlets. And his first job out of UIUC was with Target, based in Minneapolis. Now is back in the Bay Area working at LinkedIn, but oftentimes recruitment is based on location of the university. All right. What to do? Do your research. There are good schools out there. Apply to both public and private schools because privates can provide more scholarship money. Review admissions trends at your high school specifically. And let me encourage you to apply to more private schools. So as I invite Anthony to come back on, lastly, if you've been attending my webinars, let me encourage you, especially if you're parents on the call, please remind your kids as they go into this college admission cycle. There's a lot of stress. Students hear a lot. There's a lot going on. They do know what's at stake, and remind your kids that you love them no matter how the results turn out, and set that as a foundation as you go into this college admission season. All right. Questions? Go ahead and post on the Q&A, and then Anthony will go ahead and tackle. Hey, if there's no questions,
I was going to say,
we're
I'm
all
going to
going to
encourage
adjourn.
folks. Of course, if you have any questions, yeah, it's a little bit light today on the questions. So I guess there were a lot of different topics that Elton was talking about, or everyone was completely confused and have no idea where to
It's like,
start.
I don't know.
uh, there was one in the chat asking about how to find the GPA calculation for all of these different universities. I think this was around when you had the cutoffs for the middle 50% and asking how students should be kind of comparing that to a school that might count different honors programs and things like that.
Yeah, I mean the so are you asking about finding like how to calculate the GPA calculation? Or are you finding out what the like say average GPA is for a particular college?
Yeah, I think it was how am I going to get my students' GPA in comparison to that range that the school has? Like, is it fair just to compare one to one?
Yeah, so I think it's always best to go back to your high school's specific data. So if your high school uses Score, Naviance, or My Learning or something like that, then you can get the range. So you can get, I mean, it's on it's on the platform, and you can look up, let's just say Cornell, and get a sense of the range of GPA that it was being emitted. For all three of those software platforms, you can even get a scattergram of all the students who applied from that specific high school into that specific university. And you can even see where your student sits in that scattergram. And so the best place is to go back to the high school specific data. If you have to go back to national data, it's okay, but to me, it's like least reliable because schools are it's admission behavior is largely dependent on location, region, institutional priorities. Let's be honest, like the admit rate for a student from South Dakota is going to be different from a student in the San Francisco Bay Area. It is what it is, right? So, uh, so it's really, I think, less reliable to look at national data. So if you can look at high school specific data, you should. And if you don't have a platform that shares that information, talk to your school's college counselor and ask them for some of that data. So that's the best place to get it.
Just a general question about course selection and taking like wary of taking a tough course and getting a B compared to taking a lower course and getting an A. Um, Elton, any thoughts there?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think as it relates to, um, uh, as it relates to just you want to maybe the goal is to try to take as many difficult classes as you could take while maintaining as close to straight A's as you can. So maybe on the extremes, you don't want to take super easy classes and get all A's, and on the other extreme, you don't want to take like a bunch of super difficult classes and get C's, or even maybe lots of B's and lots of C's, right? So now is one. To be frank with you, I think it's very contextual to like say like is one B and AP class worth more than an A in a non-AP class. To be frank with you, I'd probably have to take a look at the transcript. There's a little bit of contour there. If you're taking the maximum amount of APs allowable and you get one B, it's not the end of the world, right? But with that being said, I think to be more precise, we'd have to see a transcript.
Uh, the chat and Q&A stay quiet.
All right.
So we might get a
Um, Yeah, any questions of any kind, and I appreciate the transcript question, even though that's uh not yeah of any ilk. So, and if not, then we're all going to adjourn and have an early dinner, and that will be fine. So. But let me thank you. Let me thank you again for joining us today. Appreciate. I do see some friends who are jumping in on the webinar, so good to see your names. Thanks for joining us. And then we will be having an early decision strategy webinar coming up at the end of May. And then so happy to have you join us then. And then otherwise, good to see you. Download the calendar. Let us know what you think. And we'll look forward to having you on again.
All
Thanks,
right.
everybody.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, take care. Bye.